You know I love roasting people when they get on TikTok and start talking about aviation stuff that they know nothing about. Well, this guy's a lawyer, and he's an aviation lawyer. But here's my problem roasting what he's about to say. He's advocating for pilots, so I want to support him, but what he's saying is just wrong and inaccurate. Check out what he says.
But if a pilot has the ability to go see a therapist and go see a counselor without having to report that to the FAA, the amount of pilots who would do that would be significant. Yes. It would be exponential. There would be so many pilots who would do that just purely based on the stress of a job, of flying a hunk of metal, defying physics for 4 hours, defying gravity, and flying through the air with 200 souls behind you. That's a stressful job.
How is someone a lawyer and able to say so many wrong things in 30 seconds? First, let's talk about the really obvious thing. This is a physics mathematical equation for lift. That is literally how planes are able to get lift and get off of the ground. Now, I was going to explain this and what all this math actually means, but I literally have no idea. So I'm just going to shut my mouth because I'm not a mathematician or a physicist, and I did okay in math in school, but I have no idea how to explain this in a comprehensive way that have it make any sense. This guy who's talking obviously knows a lot of pilots. He graduated from the Air Force Academy, which is not easy to get into, and he's a lawyer. So he's clearly very smart and probably has a much higher IQ than I could ever dream to have. But when he says things like this,
just purely based on the stress of a job, of flying a hunk of metal, defying physics for 4 hours, defying gravity.
We aren't defying gravity, we aren't defying physics. It's literally all explained here on this smart guy sheet. Now let's talk about this stressful job about having 200 souls behind you.
And flying through the air with 200 souls behind you. That's a stressful job.
Well, that's also wrong. Now, while this guy does have the basic qualifications to be an airline pilot, from the 3 minutes of research that I did on him, he was never an airline pilot. Which is fine because you don't need to be actually doing this in order to have an opinion on aviation, but you should have done something if you're going to have an opinion on that thing. Like, I don't have opinions on what it's like to be a fighter pilot. I think it would be really fun and awesome to fly a fighter plane, but you don't ever hear me saying like, well, here's what's going through the mind of a combat fighter pilot in this situation, because I've never done that. So I have no idea what it would be like to be doing that, and therefore I just shut my mouth. Now, I have flown a lot of different planes, but now I'm currently flying this lovely lady, and she can fly about 400 people. So I can't speak on having 200 or 400 people sitting behind me, and whether it's 400 people or a bunch of boxes really makes no difference to me. It doesn't really change my stress level. Now, the only time that I have been stressed about who was sitting behind me was I used to have landing competitions where I'd let the flight attendants rate our landings and we'd have a competition for it. That's the only time that I was ever really stressed about, oh man, what's going on behind me? That's the only time. Whether you have people back there or not, it's really not the most stressful part of our job. So the next time you're flying on vacation, just realize your pilot is not sitting up here looking like this. Now, if you are an airline pilot and you are feeling this type of way, either you need some additional training on how to fly your jet, or maybe being an airline pilot isn't for you. And I know that sounds really harsh, but this job is just not super stressful. And I should explain that doesn't apply if you're going through flight school. If you're doing stuff in flight school and you're really nervous, I got nervous. There was maneuvers I thought this plane's gonna fall out of the sky 100%, or this is definitely how I'm gonna die. I felt all those types of things. So if you're in flight school and you're feeling nervous about some of the things, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about commercial airline and commercial aviation. There is very little that's safer than being able for you to just walk onto a plane like this. This guy's talking about being an airline pilot. So we're talking about airline pilot stuff here. So if you have a situation where you're coming in onto a really gusty crosswind landing and everything is crazy, is that stressful? I guess there's some stress to it, but here's the thing to realize. If you're coming in and you aren't able to land the plane because it's so gusty and so windy or rainy or whatever, well, you just do a go around and you try it again. And if you don't work it out that time and you go, wow, this is outside of my skills, I'm not going to be able to get in here, then all you do is you pick up the phone and you call your dispatcher or you tell air traffic control, hey, I'm not able to get in here, I need another airport. What airport do you have that's nearby that I can land at where the wind isn't going 50 miles an hour from the side, gusting to 70? I'd like to go there, please. So it's really not that stressful, and you have the gas to get there, and so all that stuff is planned out ahead of time. So is it really stressful? No. Do you want to make that landing work? Yeah, of course. You want to get your day over with and go to the hotel. You're not getting paid extra to go fly somewhere else, but That's not stressful. To me, a stressful job is something like this, where you're going to work every day wondering if people are going to show up and shoot you. You pull somebody over, you don't know if they have a gun or they're going to be some friendly guy, and that's what you're dealing with every day. To me, that's a stressful job. Or how about running into a burning building in order to save people's lives or save them from being caught on fire? A lot of those guys and gals are going to put their lives on the line and risk their life in what I would consider a stressful situation in order to save your life. Most airline pilots, well, I'm sorry to break it to you, you might want to get to your vacation in Mexico, but if the winds or the rain or the weather is not cooperating, well, I'm not risking my life in order to get you there. So when a guy like this starts making a video about how super stressful our job is,
That's a stressful job.
I don't like it, because what it communicates is our job is inherently risky or dangerous for you as a passenger or for us as pilots, and neither of those two things are true. And neither is this part where there's huge groups of airline pilots that want to see a therapist but can't because then we lose our jobs.
But if a pilot has the ability to go see a therapist and go see a counselor without having to report that to the FAA, the amount of pilots who would do that would be significant.
I honestly didn't have any information about this topic until this video came up, and then I started doing some research to figure out what was going on. And of course, the first thing I did is went to TikTok and get their opinions on it, and then I decided I better check out the FAA website. Now, on the FAA website, it says here as the very first line, the FAA is committed to prioritizing the mental health of pilots. Now, it is true that if I were to go to a therapist, that I would have to disclose that to the doctor that I have to go see to get my medical. Every pilot needs to go every 6 or 12 months in order to get a physical, and they listen to your heart and all these other tests that they do to make sure that you're capable of safely flying a plane. And if I had, in the prior time, gone to see a therapist of some kind, I would have to disclose that. So that is true, that that information has to be disclosed. That's accurate. But it says here on this FAA website that the medical examiner can request additional psychological testing or defer the application to the Office of Aerospace Medicine if he or she is concerned that further evaluation is necessary. That is not, I go to a therapist and I lose my entire career. That's not how it works. But let's play devil's advocate here. Let's imagine that did happen. Let's say if I got so upset about all the mean things that people say about me on the internet that I said, oh, I need to go see a therapist. And then in doing that, I lost my medical and then I couldn't fly anymore. Without a medical, you can't be a pilot. Well, I pulled this off the internet, but in the US, most major airlines have something called loss of medical insurance. Meaning, if I were to lose an eye, because being a 10-year-old boy that I am, that I might be in the backyard someplace shooting a BB gun, and a BB gun could bounce off of a tree and hit me in the eye. I could actually see that happening, but I lose my eye and I can't fly anymore. Well, this loss of medical insurance would pay me a decent portion of my pilot salary until I turned 65. It is different for every country and every airline. This is just what's going on in the US. My airline has this, a lot of my friends' airlines have this. And the reason is because you could be, as an airline pilot, the sole provider for your family. And if you lost your medical, that would be stressful because now you can't feed your family. So that part would be stressful. So the airlines have put this in place probably to prevent pilots from going out and flying with some major medical problem that they're concerned, like, man, I'm not going to be able to feed my family, I'm going to go fly. And then you're putting the passengers' lives at risk, including their couple $100 million aircraft. They don't want to lose that because you had some meltdown. So that's why they have something like this. And then he also suggests that it would be a good idea to allow pilots to go see a therapist without reporting it to the FAA.
Without having to report that to the FAA, the amount of pilots who would do that would be significant.
I am all about the government not being intricately involved in every aspect of my life. However, if I am flying with someone and they 2 days earlier went to a doctor and they said that, oh, I feel suicidal and this and that, I think that's something that should be able to have a red button on their desk. They hit that and that person not being allowed to go fly. Not, okay, great, I'll see you next Tuesday. Oh yeah, no, I got a trip I got to go on. I'll be back on Thursday. That's not what I would want to have happen. So that whole keep it from the FAA, I don't think that that's a really great plan. If you are having issues, this flight doc from the FAA is saying that it's not an automatic where they pull your ticket.
Many pilots are afraid that they will permanently lose their medical certificate if they are diagnosed with depression or anxiety.
Meaning that they'll take your medical away and take your license away. It's not an automatic. And with things set up like the medical insurance and loss of medical insurance, if somebody is having a breakdown and they call their airline, and I know this for a fact, I know guys that have been in like very messy divorces, and they've called the chief pilot and said, look, I'm in this crazy messy divorce situation and I literally can't focus on anything else but that. Your airline isn't going to fire you over that. They may not like it, but they would rather have you at home sorting that out than out flying the plane. Same as if you had a medical emergency, like, hey, my kid just got hit by a car and I'm on day one of this 5-day trip that I'm on. Any chance I can go early, go home early? Are they gonna use your sick time for that? Absolutely. Are they gonna say, no, I want you out there flying that plane? They're not gonna want that because you're not gonna be focused on flying the plane. It's not gonna be safe. So this whole concept of like, just bottle it up, and there's pilots flying around with all these bottled up emotions, and if they just had the ability to go see a therapist secretly, then everything would be resolved because we're flying all the time in this super highly stressful job. It's just not accurate. Most pilots, when I talk to them, and I spend hours talking with people on the flight deck on these long flights, they are generally talking about they're talking about stressful stuff. They're not talking about flying the plane. They're talking about stuff at home, like, oh, my little girl is now dating a boy and I don't like him, or my wife is doing this or that. Like, that's the stuff they talk about that's stressful. I don't hear pilots almost ever talk about, oh, the job itself is stressful. And if it is the job, it is something unrelated to flying the plane. They keep changing my schedule. We keep having these passengers that are doing whatever. You've seen these different videos where people are fighting each other on the plane. That stuff can be stressful. Flying, that's not stressful. That's like the least stressful time of the entire job. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're dating this lady and you found her as the most beautiful girl you've ever seen, but you hated her as a person. Literally hated her. Now all of your friends are gonna be like, oh dude, you're so lucky. But you literally hate your life because you're with this person that's making you miserable. For the record, I have no idea how this person is in real life. I'm just making a point. So you are with this person and feeling miserable. All of your friends are looking at you and feeling envious of your life. It's the same as if you're an airline pilot and you hate your life. It doesn't matter how much money or lack of money you're making because you hate your life. So why would you keep doing that without making a change? So your airline, if you're out flying and you hate everything about this life that you have, then you need to make a change. And the airline is going to support you if it's a temporary thing. And if it's you hate this job thing because it's so stressful for you, well, then you're going to quit. Or you'll work in some other aspect of aviation where you don't have to be in this stressful job of flying a plane. But if you don't take any action and you do keep living this miserable life that you're having, dating that girl, for example, that bad feeling inside is going to manifest itself in another way. And you might do something like go get a DUI and then drive over some nice guy like me who's walking home at night with groceries, and because I was too cheap to pay for an Uber and I did it at night so I didn't get sunburned, and I know that sounds like who would actually do that, and sadly I did that 2 days ago because I would get sunburned because I'm in Miami right now. But you would run over somebody like me, and if you did that, your airline's not going to forgive you. If you had said, I'm having a stressful situation going on at home, I need a couple weeks off, they're going to burn up all your sick time, but they're going to let that slide. Driving over me, that's not going to be a good look. Now, if only I had one of these gavel things I could bang on my desk, and then I could say, Your Honor, I rest my case. I know that's a judge thing, and I'm doing a lawyer thing. I'm confusing the two things, but it doesn't really matter. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.